The world is splitting apart. Not from bombs, not from an official foreign invasion army, but from within. Everywhere you look, Britain, Europe, Australia, nations are at war with themselves. It's not a war fought with rifles or tanks. It's a war fought with words, ideology, censorship, and street violence. We are watching Western civilization fracture in real time. In Britain, you can't raise your own flag without being called a racist. In France, protests burn through the capital every week. In Australia, proud citizens waving their national flag are called extremists. This isn't coincidence, it's consequence. We've allowed the loudest, angriest voices to redefine pride as hate and unity as division. And when that happens, a nation loses its identity. Now make no mistake, civil unrest isn't coming. It's already here. Once Britain stood an example of resilience. We endured wars, bombings, economic crisis, and still stood tall. But now we are at war with ourselves. Go out in a major city, London, Birmingham, Manchester, and you'll see it. Rallies, counter-rallies, protests are happening every week. Flags ripped down. Women and veterans attacked. Citizens are shouted at for being proud of who they are. The flag, our Union flag, once a symbol of courage and freedom, has become a target. Raise it in public and you risk being labelled far right and racist. But here's the truth. It's not far right to love your country. It's not extremist to be proud of your heritage. It's not hate to say, I'm proud to be British. That used to be normal, but now it's controversial. And while people argue in the streets and on social media, Britain is burning in silence. Communities turning on each other. The media chooses sides. And politicians, they just fan the flames, hoping that chaos keeps the people distracted from their failures. If you think this is just a British issue, then you need to look across the channel. France, once the land of liberty, equality, fraternity, now lives under constant unrest. Their protests are no longer about pensions or politics. They're about identity. French citizens raising their flags have been attacked, called nationalists, or even arrested. In Germany, citizens feel silenced in their own towns, speaking out about uncontrolled migration or cultural erasure gets you branded as a racist. In Sweden, riots break out over flags and cultural displays. In the Netherlands, farmers, the backbone of the nation, protest in the streets because their livelihoods are being stripped away under the guise of progress. Across Europe, the same story repeats. Ordinary people, workers, veterans, parents just want to preserve their identity and their traditions. But the moment they do, they're attacked by mobs who claim to be the voice of tolerance. And Europe's leaders, they look the other way. They'd rather appease the few than to protect the many. This is how nations collapse. Not overnight, but by bit, when flags are burned instead of raised, when national pride is mocked instead of celebrated, when silence replaces courage. Now look halfway around the world. Australia, a nation built on courage, mateship and grit. A land that stood shoulder to shoulder with Britain through every major conflict of the last century. But now even Australia isn't immune. Protests have erupted across the country over identity, race and national pride. The Australian flag, the same flag that is draped over fallen soldiers in every war, has been torn down and spat on in streets. People waving it in rallies are branded extremists. Citizens standing for their anthem are shouted down. And just like Britain and Europe, the media, they label them far right. But they're not extremists. They're patriots. They're citizens who still believe in something sacred, that a country should love itself. Australia, Britain, Europe, we're all in the same storm. Different skies, same enemy, the enemy of division. Every great divide needs a spark. And in today's world, the media provide it daily. Headlines are written to not inform, but to inflame. Turn on the news. It's not journalism anymore. It's psychological warfare. The language is always the same. If you stand up for your country, you're dangerous. If you question authority, you're a conspiracy theorist. If you wave your flag, you're far right. And so people retreat into silence. But silence doesn't bring peace, it brings decay. And while decent, hardworking people keep their heads down, the loud minority hijacks the narrative. They rewrite history, redefine language, and ridicule anything traditional. And what's worse, we've let them do it. If you're still with me, grab your brew. At Combat Ready HQ, we built this brand on resilience, discipline, and unity, the values that built our nation. And if there was ever a time to wake up, focus, and get mission ready, it's now. Our coffee isn't just a drink, it's a fuel for those who refuse to give in. Why not try some of our blends? Covert Ops, In the Shadows, and Battle Brew. All roasted for those who never quit. Because when the world loses its backbone, we keep ours. Grab a bag at combatreadyhq.co.uk, the link is in the description. Now let's get back into it. They once said the left used to stand for peace, equality and fairness. But that's gone. Now that same movement who apparently once fought for tolerance thrives on anger, censorship and violence. We've seen it in Britain, rallies attacked, police overwhelmed, and anyone who speaks differently targeted. We've seen it in Europe, Antifa and radical groups showing up at peaceful events, throwing bottles, punching people and calling it justice. We've seen it in Australia, crowds silencing anyone with an opposing view. These groups don't want equality, they want control. They don't debate, they destroy. And what's dangerous is how normal this has become. When violence is justified for a cause, society crosses a line it can't uncross. History shows us every time a country begins policing speech and punishing patriotism, civil war follows. Civil wars don't start overnight. They start in whispers, in arguments online, in divided families, in silence from leaders who should know better. Britain is at that line. Europe is already teetering. Australia is watching carefully, knowing the same seeds have been planted there too. When a nation's own people start fearing their government more than respecting it, you're in dangerous territory. And here's the truth that no one wants to say. If people aren't allowed to express their culture peacefully, they'll eventually express it forcefully. We don't want that. No one does. But history repeats itself when leaders ignore the warnings. So where do we go from here? Because division can't be solved by shouting louder or hating harder. It's remembering what unites us. We're British, we're European, we're Australian, we're Western nations built on sacrifice, freedom and courage. Our ancestors fought tyranny so we could stand proud, not so we'd be afraid to raise our flag. The flag is not just fabric, it's a reminder of those who gave everything so that we could live free, draped over coffins, raised in battlefields, and carried by generations who refused to kneel. If you live in Britain, be proud to be British. If you live in France, be proud to be French. If you live in Australia, be proud to be Australian. Patriotism is not hate, it's honour. If things continue on this path, civil unrest won't be theory, it'll be reality. The fractures in Britain, the riots in Europe, the division in Australia, they're not isolated. They're symptoms of a much bigger sickness, a society that's forgotten how to respect itself. We are witnessing the slow unravelling of Western civilization unless ordinary people stand up, not with violence, not with hatreds, but with courage. The courage to speak the truth, hold the line, and remember who we are. This isn't about politics, it's about principle. It's about protecting what our forefathers built, not letting it collapse under division and fear. The line is drawn. Britain must choose. Unity or chaos. Europe must decide. Heritage or hysteria. Australia must stand firm or fall into the same trap. We are not extremists. We are patriots. We are the ones who refuse to bow, who remember the cost of freedom and still believe that a flag means something. War, it doesn't have to come, but if we don't change course, it will. And when that day comes, history will ask, who stood up when it mattered most? The answer must be us. Stand tall, speak truth, and never be beaten.